Hey everybody, this is Tom Richardson. I have my guest friend here, Seth Paulson, with me today.
How you guys doing?
So Seth and I are actually going to talk about, since we actually both recently saw The Dark Knight Rises. And also another thing to notice, guys, is this is probably the first video I've done in a while that's not in my basement. This is actually Seth Paulson's basement here. Yeah, this is Seth's basement. So anyway, we both saw Dark Knight Rises recently, and so we really want to talk about the whole cinematic Batman universe as it stands today. Recently online, they've noted that a Batman reboot's going to happen eventually. So before that happens, we want to talk about how Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher, and Christopher Nolan have all taken on Batman throughout the years. So to start things off, we're going to start off with the original Batman by Tim Burton from 1989. And what we're going to do also, guys, is we're going to talk about briefly what we like and don't like about each Batman installment. So for the original Batman, you guys, at least for me, and then I'll let Seth talk here in a second, I thought the original Batman had a great comic book vision. I thought Jack Nicholson played a great Joker that was more along the line of Bob Kane's Joker. And I also thought Michael Keaton played a great Batman, and I thought Kim Basinger was a very good love interest for the film. But my only flaw about the first Batman is that it needed more depth at times. And actually, if you look at Roger Ebert's old review for this film, he's even going to tell you that there really is no reason to care about this film for the simple reason that there's not enough depth to it. But Seth, how'd you feel about the original Batman?
You know, I think one thing I loved about the whole, actually the first Batman film that was made in 1989 was, I grew up watching it as a kid, and actually I think just over time it just really grew up, on me. And of course, not only did I watch the films, but I also did, I also got like the action figures and stuff like that. So I was just really driven in this Tim Burton's world of, Batman. So I thought this was a great film. I think, one thing that I can agree with Tom over here is that I think Tim Burton's portrayal of Joker was really cartoonish. It was really more towards the the comical side, which was the comics. And of course, once we get later into the Dark Knight, we can describe about the new version of the Joker. But that's actually one thing I liked about this Batman's version of the Joker was it's very comical, but yet he can be very cynical at times too. So, but other than that, I think all in all, I thought it was a great film. Probably the only bad thing, if I had to really dissect the film too, was saying I would say it probably went a little quick. I mean, there was a lot of actions, but I don't think it, like you said, I don't think it really covered a lot. So,
well, I guess another thing with
times.
I guess another problem I have with this film too, and actually on Tim Burton's behalf, I will say it is cool how he did this, but at the same time, we really don't get to know a lot about Bruce Wayne by doing this too. At the beginning of the film, you're thinking you're watching something that happened in Bruce Wayne's past, with the kid walking out of the theater with his parents. And you're like, oh, God, this is Bruce Wayne's parents about to get killed. That's the whole, for those who knew the comics at the time, they knew that that was going to happen. But we find out in a few minutes later that Batman is already Batman. In fact, Bruce Wayne's an adult at this time, and what we're seeing is another family going through something that Bruce Wayne also read.
That was similar. I think that was probably...
And I thought it was cool, but I thought it was like, you know what?
It was
people
cool.
who don't know about Batman aren't going to know what happened a second ago.
It's cool, but at the same time, actually, if this is like the first time you've actually had a chance to actually see Batman, if you haven't ever seen like the 60s version of Batman, or let alone read the comics, then I think the first time, like when you see that the first couple get shot up, by those mugglers, you're going to be confused. Mm-hmm. Like, which one is, like, Bruce's parents. And actually, when I was a child, because this is the first time I really had any taste of Batman, of this film, I thought, it was confusing at first. But, of course, when I grew older and started watching the film a little more and dissected it, then, well, hey, I understood it, over time. So I think that's probably one of the other faults, too, I forgot to mention. But all in all, a good film, and it was definitely Tim Burton's vision.
And speaking of Tim Burton, Tim Burton also returned for the sequel, which was called Batman Returns, which came out in 1992. And in this version, you guys, it had Danny DeVito as the Penguin and Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. And I guess another really misleading thing about Batman Returns is Batman never technically left after the first film, but I think they called it that simply because cinematically he returned to the big screen. I think that's why they called it that. But as far as goods and bads go for this film, you guys, I thought Burton's filmmaking style is quite clear and impressive. Because the first Batman film did so well, Tim Burton was given more creative freedom with this one. And I thought that that was a very unique thing to see. If you actually look at the concept drawings for Batman Returns, it looks like something you would see out of Nightmare Before Christmas, which is very much a Tim Burton film. However, on the negatives, you guys, I thought it needed an overall more interesting story, since I thought the whole Joker story in the first film was a little bit more interesting. And I also thought Burton almost had too much creative freedom, because a lot of parents at the time complained that the scene where Penguin rips a guy's nose off with his mouth was too dark for children. And, you know, even at the time I saw it, I remember my mom even kind of, because, you know, at the time where I first saw it, I actually saw it from a video rental store, because I was only 2 when it came out. And at the time, I'm like, oh, Mom, I love that first Batman movie. I got to see the sequel. And I was like, And so, and it turns out I can see why she was hesitant, because when you're 7 or 8 years old, and you see a guy bite his nose off.
You know what's funny?
Like, Mom, what rating is this movie?
You know what's funny about that? Because actually, when I was younger, when I was over my, the person who babysat me and my sister, every so often she would actually, throw on Batman Returns. But before that, I've already seen the film. But it was funny because like any time that the party scene is like, hey, congratulations, Mr. Cobblepot. We want to congratulate you for becoming the new mayor of Gotham City. But anyway, because I knew because some of the guys were being they were being idiots. I think they were being a little satirical about the whole experience. But anyways, it was just so frightening because I knew that scene was going to come up when Penguin was going to bite the guy's nose. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really funny. But over time, I got used to it.
So Seth, what were some of your other impressions of Batman Returns? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? And how did it feel compared to Burton's first Batman movie?
One thing I thought it was definitely. I think one thing I loved about Tim Burton. And he was very consistent throughout both films. You definitely, if you actually look, like the Nolan universe, like Nolan with the Batman films, he was very consistent. Tim Burton, I thought he was very consistent, but I think this one, not only did he keep that style from the first film, but he also made this film a lot more darker. And you can definitely see, with the, not only with Penguin, and of course, he had a lot of violent scenes, but also Catwoman too. I think the first time you'll see Catwoman in this film, and of course, people who have already seen the film, when she keeps doing like those, she does like flips, and of course, this is like the first, person she saves, and you think she's saving the woman that's, from the Muggler, but of course, she doesn't, because basically she only cares about herself, which is, Selena Kyle. So, and I remember the first kill, and actually, she had like these razor sharp, fingernails, and she's like, basically she gave the guy a tic-tac-toe face. She's like tic-tac-toe, and a punch in the face. So, but at that time, when I watched the film, I was probably only 10, and to me that was pretty violent. So, in regards to violence and in regards to the story making, I think overall the film was good. It was definitely a Tim Burton world, but I thought it was just a lot darker. But it was a good film. So.
And for those who are wondering, I know we're pretty far into the video already. We're actually going to divide this into 2 parts. So as soon as we reach around the 12-minute mark, and phone's ringing. So Seth's going to answer that, but actually no, I guess he's not going to answer that. But so we're actually going to talk about Batman Forever quickly, and you have to answer that. So we're going to talk about Batman Forever, and like I said, whatever time we have left before the 12-minute mark, we'll talk about. But if we get to Batman and Robin, and it's the 12-minute mark, we're going to come back and obviously talk about that for part 2, and so are the other installments. So for Batman Forever, guys, this was the first time Joel Schumacher directed a Batman movie, and Tim Burton was the producer of this film, but he did not direct it. And for those who saw my Batman film comparison of both Burton and Nolan, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say that Burton was only the producer of the film. So as far as positives go for you guys, I actually thought Jim Carrey was a reasonable choice for Riddler, because at the time they needed more of a comedic actor to play the Riddler, because he was just so weird in the comics. He liked to read little riddles behind for Batman to solve. This is also the first Batman movie to introduce Robin, and this was both a good and a bad thing. It's good because Robin's such an iconic character in Batman, but it's bad because as soon as you include Robin, people are gonna expect some type of comic relief. So it kind of ruined that dark tone that Batman had in the first 2 movies. As far as negatives go, you guys, I actually have a lot about them, because this is actually my least favorite Batman movie. But I just thought the script was just really awful in this, and I thought that this film couldn't even be enjoyed on a camp level like Batman and Robin was. Because at least with Batman and Robin, he had some really hokey one-liners. But this film was just like, where's the script?
You know, before you dive into the more negatives, and of course I can, you know, go all day and night with the negatives. But one thing I probably liked about this film is probably when I saw the film. This is actually the first Batman film I actually saw in theaters. When did the film come out? 96?
In 1995. I forgot to mention
that's right. Okay. But anyways, that's the first Batman film I actually saw in theaters, and of course, at the age I was when I saw this film, I really enjoyed the film. But of course, over time, when I started learning about Batman's origins and stuff like that, let alone just reflecting back off this film, it just was just so bad. And I understand and if we actually go back to Tim Burton's universe now, remember how I said his Joker was comical, is more to the it was comical and cynical at the same time, but his Joker was more towards the comics and but he just had that character. But anyways, when we skip to the third film, the Batman franchise, which Schumacher's first film, and of course Tim Burton produced the film, it was just, I think it was over the top comedy, and that's really not who Batman is. And I remember actually. So anyways, let me just dive into my negatives, and there's just plenty of them, but I'll just maybe describe just a few of them. I remember when they had described about how Two-Face, got burned on the side.
That was extremely corny.
It was just so bad.
I hated the origin of Two-Face.
What happened was I think he had like a couple. When he was in court, and of course I think you guys who have already seen the film, know what I'm talking about.
And here's actually the worst part. If you watch the first Batman movie, Billy D. Williams, who played Lando Calrissian from The Empire Strikes Back in Star Wars, played Harvey Dent, and now all of a sudden Tommy Lee Jones, a white man, is playing the role. So you begin to ask the question: if Burton really produced the film, wouldn't he have stand up to Joel Schumacher and say, "Hey man, I kind of let Billy D. Williams play the part. We kind of had to let him be Two-Face now, not Agent K from Men in Black."
I just don't see how they would actually went on with the film. I mean, I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be biased or anything, but I don't think I don't think Harvey Dent was ever black. He was never black. He was always white. I guess that's one thing I mean, of course, looking at the third film, and then of course looking back at the first film, when Harvey Dent was black, I really don't understand Tim Burton's.
So guys, we're at the 12-minute mark, and we're going to continue talking about Batman Forever and the other Batman installments when you come back for part 2.